The Persephone Foundation, Timeline Archives, Timeline Designation MA-001, codenamed No World Wars. This is another timeline where Archduke Franz-Ferdinand survived assassination. There are no world wars and fewer conflicts overall. Colonial power remains considerable, and Britain still rules the waves, though Japan is gaining on them. Russia is a democratic power, and Tokyo, with its nearly 50 million residents, can be called Welthauptstadt. The US is a real democratic champion for the oppressed, and the Ottoman Sultan got filthy rich from Arabian oil. Germany is known for leading the world in scientific research, as opposed to the engineering stereotype of your timeline. And Berlin has the biggest Jewish cultural center in Central Europe. India and China are richer and less populated, at the cost of foreign powers meddling in their domestic affairs. Power blocks and nations of note. Mitteleuropa, the German Empire. After a turbulent 20th century, Germany is now a democratic monarchy, where the elected Reichstag has real teeth. More technocratic and rightist than your timeline. Economic and military-wise, eclipsed by the Russian Empire, but still the second power on continental Europe and a leading center of scientific research, though the US is catching up real quickly. Population: 97 million, with the third largest Jewish population after Russia and Austro-Hungary. Berlin now boasts about 5 million residents, still not Welthauptstadt, not nearly close to it. The German Confederation, a confederation of former German colonies and the mother country. The independent colonies of Togo, Cameroon, and Ostafrika are still being pushed around by their former master, even if their own autocrat/president says otherwise. German Südwest is a province of the home country, after the last native uprising has been ruthlessly crushed. Population: 94 million, not counting Germany proper. Less than your timeline, due to the Germans not losing all of their certain traits. The Austro-Hungarian Empire has decentralized to a certain degree. The Slavs have gotten their rights, but still not enough to qualify for a triple monarchy. The plan to split up the Hungarian part was too complicated, so they just settled for the Croatian region. Now the dual monarchy is a sleepy little partner in Mitteleuropa, except for the occasional troublemaker, but that's what Big Brother Germany is there for. Population: 78 million, multi-ethnic, and still giving lots of headaches. And the Kingdom of Bulgaria. Little Prussia in the Balkans, and holiday destination for German or Austrian tourists. The Black Sea coast is this timeline's Mallorca. A curiosity in Mitteleuropa for having an excellent relationship with Russia. Population: 8.7 million, have expelled most of their Turkish citizens as a security measure after the Christian pogroms of the 30s and 40s in the Ottoman Empire. The Entente, the British Empire. With a wee bit less stiff upper lip attitude nowadays, Britain still rules the waves and the Commonwealth, and with the largest navy in the world, though many ships are really obsolete, the Empire has been transformed into a true Commonwealth of Nations. Worried about being surpassed by the triple superpowers, in economic and military terms. The population of the United Kingdom is 77 million, with sizable Commonwealth ethnic groups in the home country, but less than your timeline. The Commonwealth. The dominions of the Empire are Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, still under apartheid, Rhodesia, which would make Sud-West seem like a walk in the park, and Ireland, which is still troublesome. And the giant of the Commonwealth, India. Some joke that India will swallow the empire whole. Some don't find it very funny. Also included are the former British colonies in Asia and Africa. Population, about 1.4 billion. Smaller than your timeline, due to earlier industrialization, longer colonization, and the British having some common traits with the Germans. The French Republic. The sick man of Europe. It has been sick for a very long time. Close to 90 years, with the occasional healthy periods. Suffers from maintaining the third largest army and navy in Europe, with terrorist incidents in the department Algeria and political and economic hiccups. Due to this, many young French have emigrated for prosperous Quebec. Population, 100 million. More Africans and Arabs than your timeline, due to lower demographics. As a result, there is lots of ethnic strife and ghettoization. The French Community. A sort of group set up after France realized it's cheaper to control the colonies by giving them freedom. Now they support French business interests, and also function as a source of cheap labor for France proper. Population, about the same as your timeline. The Triple Superpowers, aka the Triplets. The United States. Young, idealistic, and slightly naive. More left-wing than your timeline, with a good social welfare system and good healthcare. The world's biggest economy, and now increasingly surpassing Germany as the scientific center. Highly critical of European policy to boss around their former subjects. Population, 330 million. More immigrants from Latin America, East Asia, and Eastern Europe. Younger and more dynamic. Though immigrants from Africa still have it tough coming in, besides the occasional intellectual. The Russian Empire has reformed exceptionally over the last 50 years. Nowadays, a real constitutional monarchy, with politics like your own United States, but with more parties. They've also given minorities real rights. The Tsar still has some power, but the Duma calls the shots. They have the world's largest army and biggest economy after the US, and the biggest cities in Europe. Moscow alone boasts over 30 million residents. They are very good friends with the US. Population, nearly 410 million, what with no wars, no gulags, no genocides, and no stagnation. The Russian Kingdoms. While most Russian minorities are now equal citizens within the empire, Poland and Finland have gotten full autonomy. But the Tsar is still the head of state, albeit only a figurehead. Russia controls the foreign and defense policies, but otherwise they are free to do as they please. Population, 42 million. Poland has about 35 million residents and a thriving Jewish community, and they elected their first Jewish prime minister a couple years ago. Note, these numbers are already included in the empire proper. And the Japanese Empire. Without wars, and with a more pro-natalist policy, Japan has a bigger population than your timeline, which makes the home islands really crowded. Tokyo being this timeline's largest city, with nearly 50 million residents. They are more conservative, and still come down hard on their Korean or Chinese subjects. They are the least democratic of the three powers, and not really friends with either Russia or the US. More like good business associates. They have the second largest and most modern navy in the world. Population, 250 million, although over a third of the population are Korean or Chinese. Regional powers. The Ottoman Empire. this timeline's largest supplier of oil. This oil has made the Sultan, his cronies, the Turks, and the rest of his subjects, yes, in that order, really wealthy. After nearly getting itself into a war with the great powers, especially Russia, after a series of pogroms and massacres in the 30s and 40s, they now encourage their Christian subjects to emigrate to the US or Russia. Arabs and Kurds are increasingly stirring up trouble. Population, 180 million, increasingly worried about the 120 million or so Arabs, Christians, and Kurds demanding more rights and freedoms. The Chinese Federation. Oh, China. A nostalgic destination for the Western or Indian tourist. They've resigned themselves to being pushed around by foreign powers, even by the idealistic US, but have made the best of it in the form of loads of money. They're a democracy with an emperor of the Yuan Shikai dynasty as a figurehead. The cities are not so crowded like your timeline. More tradition-minded with a healthy dose of Western costumes, and also a more middle-class economy. Think along the lines of your own South Korea. Population. After having a saner but more economic-minded leadership, the population is lower than your timeline, about 750 million. The Italian Kingdom. The Dolce Vita. Neutral, beautiful, mafia-ridden Italy has enjoyed the near century of peace. Though the politics are still a mess, it is nowhere near the upheavals of the late 20s and early 30s. They have now successfully Italianized northern Libya and Eritrea, with effective colonization and deportation of the locals into the client state of Fezzan. They had to let go of Somalia, though. Population. 65 million. Northern Libya and Eritrea now run at about 70% and 50% Italian nowadays. And the Brazilian Republic. In the absence of a Cold War, Brazil has enjoyed a stable democracy for a long time, though there is room for improvement. They're the biggest economic partner of the US in Latin America. Richer and less corrupt than your timeline, though at the cost of the environment. Nonetheless, the Green Movement started out of Brazil as opposed to Europe, and now Brazil has more effective environmental controls than your timeline. Population, 170 million. Being richer and less corrupt than your timeline, Brazil started its demographic slowdown earlier. This has been a Persephone Foundation timeline reading. Thank you for listening.